And I want to welcome Tilo Bonow from PIABO. He's the founder and CEO. Thank you, Tilo, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Tilo is also one of our mentors for GERMANTECH. So we're very happy to have you on board to help us better understand the magic of PR. And why don't we start with you introducing yourself and how you ended up getting into this whole sphere of PR and founding PIABO.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, my name is Tilo Bonow and I'm the founder and CEO of PIABO, and PIABO was founded 2006. And the idea was that at this time, there was actually no agency that really supported founders and startups and helping them to grow and become world champions or tech heavyweight and give them the attention that they deserve. Because as you all know, startups often are in a very special situation. They have new innovative business models, they have new world-changing ideas, they come maybe up with ideas that are very new with society or that are maybe also attracting the attention from policymakers, etc. So there's a different kind of storytelling, a different kind of need, because they have also other target groups, for example, not just their clients, also as nobody knows them, they want to attract the best talent, they want to attract investors. So there was a very unique approach that we said, we want to connect all these new innovative companies and founders that really make a difference in all of our lives and really changing how we live, how we work, how we laugh, how we eat, etc., and give them the attention that they deserve and help them to really become global champions. And that was the foundation that was PIABO founded on. Before, I was the global head of communications for several internet companies and also worked with investors very closely together, also on the agency side, also in journalism. So I know a little bit all sides of the table. And yeah, today PIABO is really the leading tech communications firm here in Europe, where we really support the tech heavyweights from Silicon Valley, be it companies that you all know like Stripe or GitHub, Evernote, WeWork, investors like Silicon Valley Bank or Holdspring Ventures or many others, but also unicorns here from Germany like N26 or Infarm in the food tech space, etc. So that's what drives us to help all these enthusiastic entrepreneurs and change makers to help them tell their stories, to help them to communicate properly, craft their stories, and connect them with the media, influencers. And that's really very, very passionate. I'm very thankful for our amazing team that is unfortunately now in our empty office. As you can see, we have to be here in the virtual office, but it's really fantastic to work with a team from around 50 people now and really having every day new ideas where we can put our thinking caps on and think, how can we help them to bring their business not just to life, but also help them globally to get the attention that they deserve.
I could imagine that it's a very creative space. Maybe you can freshen up our view on what are the basic cornerstones of public relations, of PR, like what belongs to PR?
That's an interesting question, because many just put it also in the marketing bucket and say, right, not even understand that actually there are a lot of differences, right? So what we don't do is maybe easier also to explain is when it comes to whatever, a TV spot, for example, right? Or an ad in a newspaper, or a billboard that you see at the corner of the street, or a Google ad, etc. That's not what PR is about. And even more simple speaking, when you open the newspaper in the morning, maybe at your breakfast table, what you see at the content side, right? That's what the editorial side is. That's more on the PR side, and the ads that you see in your newspaper, that's more on the advertising marketing side. So we of course try to inspire journalists, multipliers, tell them about great entrepreneurs, new technologies, crafting stories that hopefully catch the curiosity and they say, oh, interesting, tell me more about it, right? And I think it's very important to make this clear difference between what's PR and what's marketing, because in our world, of course, it's a lot about earned media, Sometimes also it gets involved into paid medias. You see this sometimes also in B2B context when there's a very niche media where you have then these kind of advertorials, right? Obviously, there's also then part at the border between marketing and PR. Owned media, of course, is also important. Often we help also with when it comes to newsletters or the website or blog content. So channels that you as a communication person or founder are in control of, right? And of course, very important also these days, shared media when it comes to all the social and digital platforms in these days. So this is mainly what we see from our standpoint as our day-to-day business. And when you see it, let's say in 4 buckets, you have the public relations business where you have mostly all kind of topics around media relations, corporate communications, product communication, crisis, storytelling, etc. Then you have the second bucket where you have all kind of social media topics, from the strategy to the execution when it comes to LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, digital content, which can then sometimes also lead obviously to lead generation topics, etc. Then in number 3, you have then all kind of content creation, content marketing, infographics, for example, a white paper, case studies, things like that, has also a very big editorial part of the business. And last but not least, when it comes to business influencers, so the question who that is not necessarily a journalist should know about my product, should know about my company. So it's not influencers, often B2C world. Of course, we all know people on Instagram, like travel bloggers or beauty bloggers, but also in the B2B field and for corporate communications, there are a lot of needs to communicate with target groups that are not journalists, right? Like policymakers, you know, these days there are a lot of intersections between the technology and the company that you are and the policymakers, right? There are also questions when it comes to AI or data privacy, things like that. But also it can be a university professor, or it can be someone who's a professional keynote speaker, or other people from the industry. So that's the part of the business influencers becomes also more and more important. And these are the 4 buckets where we operate in.
I really like the analogy of the 4 buckets because it helps me visualize all the tools that you were able to just separate in those. And later we'd like to go back into that first bucket when you talk about like in a crisis, for example. But maybe before we do that as well, at what point do you start doing PR? Because you'd mentioned a lot of, you know, a lot of big companies that are well known and maybe some of the unicorns, but surely I also know you have like a sustainable development portfolio with younger startups, but at what point should someone start thinking about doing PR? And then I guess at what capacity, but where do you start?
Interestingly, the question is a little bit different. If you think, when should you start, for example, with an agency or like a professional service provider like we are? Because with PR in general, you start from day one, because the question is always what kind of story I want to tell? How do you want to position my company? What sets me apart from my competition, for example? So there are a lot of questions that you ask yourself right at the beginning. And I think, especially at the beginning, it's also very authentic when maybe the founder grabs directly to the phone and calls someone from, let's say, Gründerszene or Deutsche Startups, right? So I think PR is fundamental from day one, because everyone should think about what is actually my story that I want to tell. I want to sell my company, and storytelling is not only relating to the PR when it comes to journalists. I tell also a story when I'm at the pitch stage, when I'm pitching to an investor, for example, right? So all these things, positioning my mission, my vision, my purpose, it's usually something that is defined very early on. Of course, in a startup, it can change also quickly, of course, no question. But I think PR, as it helps with so many sectors. I mean, think about it. What is a startup, right? I mean, there's a founder, has an amazing idea, thinks about a name, registers a website, nobody knows, right? And then what does he need? He needs investors, he needs a team. So, but do you want to work for a company that you never heard of, right? So of course you start Googling, you read articles, you do your research. If you don't find any content and trustworthy content, then you might don't want to work for the company. Same with the investors. Obviously, it helps when you, as a being already out there, and investors have maybe heard about you, say, oh, there's this interesting company. I already came 2-3 times in several blogs, newsletters, events, etc. Across them. So there are a lot of needs why early on thinking about PR is very important. The other question is more an organizational, at which point is it important to have someone in-house or working with an agency together. That's a bit more like an operational question. But thinking about your story and your positioning, how you tell your story in the different contexts, I think that's mission critical.
So do you find a lot of people underestimate this? Because what I'm actually hearing out is maybe a lot of people don't even understand the parallels between when they're creating their founding story, or let's say you're doing your first pitch on stage, and your pitch is obviously the story of what you're doing and you're succeeding, that a lot of people don't even see those parallels, but technically they're already putting together their PR portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, there's this nice saying when you say pitching on the stage in front of investors, for example. Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz, the famous investment firm, he said, a company without a story is a company without a strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a quote you can't stress enough, right? Because when you think, there's a lot of talk, especially in startups, about valuations, right? In every investor conversation, there's one topic that always comes up. But also here, right? I mean, because a lot of the valuation, of course, you can't look at so much in startups at revenues or EBITDA, right? It's simply often not existing, right? It's often about market share. Of course, you have to have your numbers right in terms of growth of for example, customers, clients, etc., right? And you have to have your company in a good shape. But a lot of it is storytelling. It's the belief where in which direction it goes, and the numbers. We can't help with that in PR, right? Of course, we can attract attention that you get more clients and more touch points, but that's something that you as a founder should have in control. But we can have control about your story and can help with storytelling. And here is then, at the end of the day, also the value that is then created. But because often you buy into your story, you buy into the belief that this founder will make it, that he has the balls also to pivot when there's a crisis right now, right? So, and as I said on stage, I mean, that's often where my heart is bleeding, where I always love these conversations that we have, because when I'm in Silicon Valley and in New York, etc., I have founders, they on stage, they telling brilliant stories, right? Often there's not much behind it, but you want to directly give them your credit card and say, hey, how much do you need? And here often in Europe, when I talk to founders here, they have often a much better product, a much better technology. But what I see here is that when I talk to them, they tell me, oh, Tilo, I understand what you do, but we are just a boring B2B company. But I said, I mean, would PayPal, would Stripe, would whatever, you name it, right? GitHub, Evernote, would they refer to themselves as a boring B2B company? As so often in life, it all starts in your head, right? And when you go in with this approach on the stage and say, I'm just a boring B2B company, right? Then of course it will be not that successful. Maybe you get a different valuation, or not so many investors maybe feel attracted. And especially B2B companies, they have so incredible opportunities, right? I mean, there's so many ideas, especially now where we're in this situation where the economy is struggling. I mean, we here in technology are at the forefront of digitization. Now, every corporate, every enterprise, every Mittelstand company, they're asking themselves, how can I digitize my business? How can I be more effective? How can I implement now blockchain, AI, all these amazing technologies? Now, it is the time to speak up as a startup and to come out of your cellars and of your fancy lofts in Berlin and tell your story out there. Because often then also they say, we have such long lead times. Yeah, of course, if nobody knows about you, it will take you 6 months or even longer, right? But if you are able to create different kind of touch points, right? That they in the morning read in your newspaper, when they go to the office, they read about you in your industry vertical media. Then maybe you're mentioned in a newsletter, they see you on stage at an industry conference. Then maybe they receive your newsletter or see your Google ad, etc. I mean, everyone in marketing knows it needs 5 to 7 touch points and contact points until someone makes a buying decision, right? And so especially as a B2B company, there's no time to be shy and say, oh, it's all about my product, I don't want to be leader. I mean, people, that's psychology 101, right? People are interested in people, right? And if you as a founder, which is greatest asset, right, as a personal brand also, go out there and speak. I mean, your product can't speak. It can be best product in the world, but a product can't speak for himself, right? The founder can speak.
Depends on what you have as a product. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but let's go into, because we also got a question as well. Let's go into the crisis mode. So how do companies behave in an economic downturn moment like now, if they have shareholders or, obviously customers, things like that? Now with Corona happening, maybe there are some cases that you can talk about as an example. How do you behave, and how important is PR in those moments?
I like this word behavior, because in the last couple of months and even years, there was a lot of talk about purpose, about values, etc. Right? That was something that everyone wanted to focus on. Now is the time to prove it, because in a crisis, it's like in a personal situation, right? When you are under pressure or there's a critical situation, it shows who you really are, and also as a company, as a founder, right? If you stick to your values, if you stick to your purpose, if it's just blah blah and literally just PR, or is it something that is really a meaning? And I think these are right now pivotal moments for many companies and teams, because how you treat your customers, your employees, your investors, etc. now, that will lead also and guide you the way in the future. And I think, karma is the also maybe not the most PR related word, but it is the way how you communicate, how you behave, how you present yourself will sooner or later bounce back to you as a company and to you as a business. And it, by the way, is not just the founder or the startup, it's also the investors, right? When you see right now, investors, you make use of the situation and just taking back term sheets or renegotiating very unfair conditions, etc. That's not how it works, right? And people will remember this. You always see each other twice. Same with your employees, right? If you're nobody knows what will literally come tomorrow, right? And how the economy develops. And nobody will be blamed for whatever, having short-term work or having to make difficult situation in companies, right? This is clear. But the question is, how do you communicate it, right? How fair and transparent are you? Are you able to take your employees, your investors, your clients along with you on this journey? And this is also part of storytelling. Storytelling, the so-called hero's journey, is not a hero's journey that just is up, 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 up. It also has its downturns. It's also the dragon that comes out of the cave and tries to kill the hero, etc. When you think about the mythology, how storytelling in the old days was, right? And this is also part of your story. It's not just the sun is shining and I get great funding rounds, etc. But the question is, are you able to communicate properly? Can you make clear where you stand? And are you transparent? Are you speak with one voice at a company? Are you able to speak in a way that everyone in the company understands it, not just the management team, not just whatever your most senior people? Are you able to get everyone along with it, right? But also have a good communication towards your investors. What are the decisions that you make? How are you be able to really bring everyone along and collect them behind you and give you a back? And I think that's there are a lot of situations where, especially in crisis, that can make or break a company. And communication, good communication, is often at the heart of it. Be it internal communication. I mean, imagine companies with hundreds and hundreds of people that now have to go to home office. I mean, for example, just speaking of our company, what we said is, we not just send you in home office, we also, if you want to get your chair delivered and your monitor delivered, that we make sure, we don't know how many weeks it lasts, that you have your back not broke, because obviously a lot of people don't have a professional office chair at home, right? Or when you're sitting just crammed in front of your small laptop, maybe it's good for your health and to do proper work also with a nice big monitor. Of course, it costs us a lot of money, but it's also a sign, hey, we take care of your health. You are important to us, right? And this kind of behavior, I think people will remember it. If you talk openly, if you explain things, of course, there can be situations where you have also discussion, right? And people are maybe saying, oh, I see that differently, that's fine. But it's also part of communication, right? And especially in crisis situations, you can't over-communicate, right?
You can't over-communicate. That's very, okay, that's a very important learning. Is there something that you shouldn't do?
I mean, of course, I'm not a big fan of talking things, how you said it, nicer or better than it actually is, right? I mean, especially internally. I think it's just a question of fairness also to your employees to be clear where you stand, what your measures going forward, and really communicate them very, at least in a, let's say, weekly mode, that they know where we stand, if it's still the case, have things change, etc. So in my company, for example, everyone knows about our numbers, everyone knows where we stand, everyone knows which clients are right now struggling, but also which new project coming on that need help. We are very clear and transparent, and I received tons of emails and messages that say, wow, that I never experienced this transparency before. But it's also not just internally, right? I mean, also your clients asking questions. Is the company healthy that I'm working with? Can they help me? Imagine you are a consumer electronic company, right? And your production is in China and South Korea or in Vietnam or wherever, right? Can they deliver? Is this partnership strong and stable? That all really affects then communication towards your clients. Can you deliver the product? What does it mean? How we handle this? How we, whatever, implementing refund policies, things like that, right? I mean, communication, as it in a positive way, affects so many ways with investors, employees, partners, clients, etc. In a crisis, it's absolutely the same. And I think it's very important to build a clear crisis comms team also that really sticks together and all departments are involved. Also the legal team. It doesn't make sense that you have something in your head which maybe legally is not even possible, right? Supply chain, clients, marketing. Maybe your marketing campaign has to be adjusted because the campaign that you plan is maybe now inappropriate in these times, right? So a lot of things to think about. And I personally kind of like crisis because it really brings everyone together. Everyone is then super creative and really kind of sticks together and moves towards one goal. So I feel it working with the clients right now. It's very energetic in a way also because you feel then they're coming first with a very, this has happened, or our production facilities or clients or whatever it is, but then it becomes with good communication and now a new energy that is fueled in the company. Then everyone sticks together, said, hey, we all in this together and we want that our company survives. That's a very, very nice mood when you can create it. But again, it requires very good communication skills.
That's exactly what it sounded like. Sounds like it's a good PR is a good reflection of what's happening internally. So maybe that's how people can gauge whether or not their level of PR is good. So I guess if someone is responsible for telling the story and they don't feel like they're necessarily telling the truth, then they might have to contemplate how they might restructure their own story. We did get a question from Shireen. I think Shireen is probably a journalist, is my feeling. I'm not sure. I want to acknowledge her question and ask it because it sounds like she's saying, even though the media has an incredible number of topics on the table, they do not have the capacity to write exciting stories because the editorial offices are understaffed. How do you deal with this? So it's a question maybe directly if you guys are having a similar situation.
I mean, the question is the question related now to the crisis situation or in general? Maybe I answer both. So first off, in general, and I think we know each other also, so greetings. It is absolutely right. I mean, when you see how many messages and emails and story pitches a journalist receives every day, it's incredible, right? I mean, I was recently in an editorial office and saw standing next to an inbox from a journalist and literally it feels like every second the email pops in with, oh, here's this nice story, and for immediate release, and press release here, and press release there. It's incredible, right? And you can say here in Germany, on average, depending, of course, on which area you're working on, but it's easy to get 300, 400, 500, 600 pitches a day, right? Mm-hmm. And when you are, let's say, working at TechCrunch or one of the international, more international media, it can be easily 800, 900, 1,000. So, and the question is now how you go through it, right? I mean, obviously you want someone to write about your story. And I think there are several ideas and methodologies for that. I mean, first of all, of course, it can't be the idea that you just be press release number 871, right? That's of course not the idea. But it starts sometimes with very simple things. For example, when I see what even in the subject line is written, often then you see this is in the subject line saying for immediate release or press release or news release, whatever. I mean, think about it. When you receive, let's say, between 500 and 1,000 messages a day, do you have even time to click in it? So already the subject line has to sell. And now everyone here in this chat can ask themselves, are you able to tell your stories, let's say, in 100 characters? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And right, this is an interesting question. If you are able to catch someone's attention and spark curiosity alone with the subject line, right? So this is, for example, one thing. And then, of course, it also the question, who comes it from, right? I mean, does the sender is known, for example, or how easy you make it also, right? Do you put a Word document as attachment so nobody can actually have click again and make it, maybe it not even goes through because the virus detection, there's a lot of things also from the very operational standpoint that you can do wrong. And then the question is also, do you have a spray and pray approach?
What is it? Call it a spray,
like a spray and pray, right?
Okay.
You just send it to, let's say, 1,000 journalists and just say, okay, there will be maybe one who takes it and does something, right? How did you do your homework beforehand, right? Did you do your research? Who is really interested in? I mean, it's not that hard to find out who are actually the journalists who are writing about your topic, who are really interested in. And maybe it makes more sense to refer, say, oh, last week you wrote about this story, and my story maybe relates to it because like a kind of follow-on thing or a different perspective on it, right? So this could be an idea to really think about it. Maybe also exclusivity. Maybe that's a story where you can give a kind of an exclusive to them. I'd rather have one story published in a good media that's relevant to me and my target group is reading it, rather than having, because in the moment what often people don't realize, in the moment where you press the button and send out your press release, everyone can have it. There's no news. So you see the news that there will be someone who writes about it, right? There's no exclusivity anymore, right? The question is it timely? Is it newsworthy, right? And so there's a lot of questions that I think right now make clear it's not as easy as it sounds. And for example, maybe there are also different kind of measures that you can use. For example, often what I see is people thinking way too much in press releases, right? The heading from one press release to another. I can tell you our American clients, they are far beyond. If they're sending 1 or 2 press releases a year, that's already a lot, right? Here in Germany, often founders come and say, oh, what's our next press release? And which kind of press release we're sending next year? I always have to say, PR has nothing to do with press releases. Of course, there's something to do with one tool, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? To think that way in PR. It always is about what is our story. Maybe it's also what is our contribution to how journalists in general work, right? Because news already happen every day with us or without us, right? Nobody's waiting for sitting there and say, what can I write today? I mean, that's usually not happen, right? So the thing is, think about maybe there are everyday kind of politicians making announcements, universities releasing studies. There's so much going on in the world. And maybe it makes much more sense using tools like news checking, right? To think about which news are already there and discussions in the society where I can just be part of the conversation. And what a journalist often needs is, for example, a good quote or an infographic or more numbers, things like that. Maybe it can be a good service provider towards the journalist and help with that, right? So I hope that clarifies a little bit how you can cut through the noise, let's say it that way. And when I'm now coming to the Corona times, I mean, of course, in these days, there are tons of stories Corona. And I mean, what many startups or general companies do, finding a little like Corona twist into their story, right? Maybe how they contribute to make living at home right now more comfortable, or how they enabling remote work, or how they're being part of the solution, not the problem, things like that. I mean, that's very interesting to see how creative then often the teams are in finding then a good hook where it then also fits into these days news.
That was actually, you clarified quite a bit and gave us a lot of good hacks. I think that was a lot of wonderful solutions, answers, and content. So two more questions before we do have to wrap it up. So in times of a crisis, when time is also kind of against you, and it sounds to me like we were hinting at, you know, a lot of these editorial rooms are empty, or the journalists are being swamped. And maybe you said the Americans, for example, are not always looking at a press release. Does more new media channels make sense then? So are the tools more like these instant things that you can put out yourself rather than going through someone?
This is exactly the point where also it shows if you are a good personal brand, right? Take, for example, a platform like LinkedIn, right? If you position yourself in a good and professional way, that can be also a source for a journalist. So for example, when you write articles, for example, or giving good insights, quotes, numbers, etc. I mean, a lot of journalists using LinkedIn, Xing, Twitter, etc., to engage with them on these platforms and putting content out there that position yourself for the topics that you stand. And they think it's never been easier to position yourself as an expert. So for example, if your expertise is in AI or blockchain or whatever, that's actually something where you really can focus on and build a personal brand out of. And if you're doing it good, I mean, you become the media instead of pitching the media, right? And position yourself. And that leads them to more, for example, requests to speaking opportunities, for example, or invitations to events, etc. So that's very important to also to build a personal brand. And I can just recommend every founder and every entrepreneur to really think what I want to stand for, what is also valuable for my company, what is really my strengths, so to say, and then really position and build a brand around it. And I think the social media channels, they are just perfect for it. And I think everyone can clarify for themselves. Some are maybe good in speaking, so maybe the format of video is good for them. Maybe have great writing skills. Others maybe are good in collecting numbers and putting them into context. But I hope that answers your question to the measures and tools that in these days, it's really amazing. And I think the time, there's no better time to start now, where really the world is in a turmoil, and to be clear what you stand for. And I think in these days, it's very, very important to stand for something. Who are you, right? And this is important towards all communities, also people who you want to work with, your partners, your clients, your investors, etc. You have to stand for something. And I think the business networks and networks like Twitter, they're amazing platforms to put out your content there, stand for something. And by the way, even if you're not a CEO or not an entrepreneur, I mean, also for your own reason, because you may want to be approached from the right. Right now, a lot of people are laid off or are in short-term work, etc. I mean, if you stand for something, it's also easier to be found from headhunting firms or from potential employers. So it helps also your personal career, right? Even in dating, what people are doing today, right? They Google first their name and see who is this guy from Tinder or for which platform. I mean, it helps in all situations of life, as it's work, as a business, etc. Having a good and strong brand, having a clear position, it's fantastic. And I think it just has to be authentic, right? That you think, what is my platform? Where do I really feel comfortable with? And that's really amazing. And there are a lot of good examples out there where you say, hey, these people maybe are not the best in class or the smartest in the world, but they stand for something. They are positioned. And when you think about blockchain, you think about this person. If you think about electric cars, you think about Elon Musk, etc. Right? And the question is, who are you?
Mm-hmm. And so it's very obvious once you've gotten to your series investment of series A, B, C, and organizationally you're getting too big or getting big, then you can go to PIABO as an agency. For those that are a little smaller, I want to ask, if I was a startup and now I'm saying, okay, because I'm a founder and I need to focus on, getting the investors on board and my cash flow and business sheets, whatever. And I want to hire someone to now take over my communication strategy. What's your tip in terms of the traits you could look for?
So I think when you hire, you're asking about a communication person in-house, right?
In-house. So if you were to hire someone to take care of your PR for you, what are your tips?
I think as often then companies have like a one size fits it all, right? So more like an all-rounder. I think very important is that they have very good writing skills, right? Because producing content from press releases, white papers, case studies, etc., can help in various departments, right? Or they bring the PowerPoint, the keynote presentation for the founder, etc. I think good writing skills are definitely important, and also that they're really understanding the tone of voice, right, and finding the right way of explaining it. Especially also when it comes to B2B companies, a good technical understanding in a way that it also means are they able to explain it like the Bild Zeitung, for example, would explain it, right? That everyone understands it. Is it very clear in the message? But also someone who has good networking skills. So someone who has a little bit like also a salesy attitude, because at the end of the day, you have also to sell your story. It's not enough to have a good story. You have also to sell it. You have to go to the phone and pitch it and go out there and spread the word. Someone also to networks for you. That means on the one hand, there are certain kind of similarities to a sales person. On the other hand, kind of a content producer skill sets are also very important. Yeah, and these are I think, two of the skills where I think I would definitely recommend founders to look at, because then you are already 80% there.
Wonderful. And I want to say thank you very much for all your insights and your knowledge. It was a 40 minutes packed full of hacks and, what can you do? And so thank you so much for your time, Tilo. And for our participants that were with us today, I also want to let you guys know that we will send a follow-up email for you guys to be able to network in our private LinkedIn and Facebook groups for anyone that wants to exchange further thoughts, our contacts. And make sure you guys stay tuned and sign up to our newsletter, because we have more exciting online events coming. And again, Tilo Bonow from PIABO, danke. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and your magical office will probably turn into your home office. So thank you very much. And we will all stay in touch and stay healthy and talk again soon. Dankeschön, Tilo.
Sehr gerne, vielen Dank. Und auch von meiner Seite aus, whoever wants can connect on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. So wherever you feel comfortable, feel free to connect. And if you have further questions, feel free to reach out. Always happy to help.
Wonderful. Dann, with those last words, tschüss.
Tschüss, danke.